외국 게임이고요. 시미안 인터페이스 플러스라는 게임입니다. 게임은 영상을 보실 텐데요. 뭔가 시점을 이용한 3D 퍼즐 게임입니다.
Hi, we're Vested Interest, and this is our game Simian.interface++, the update to Simian.interface.
Simian.interface is an abstract puzzle game. We were inspired by games like Fix Pix, Blueprint 3D, and Coin of Vantage. Games largely just about moving around till you find the right solution. But we thought that a lot of those games didn't push the mechanic far enough. They kind of just kept using the same trick over and over, which, while satisfying, it didn't make you feel like you were that smart after a little while. We wanted to kind of explore that a lot more deeply.
Yeah, in a lot of ways they had kind of the level design or progression of, say, Pac-Man or Space Invaders as opposed to something like Portal. And we really wanted to try to add that kind of variety and twist to each subsequent level. Each level tries to introduce a very basic idea, the first level being kind of our version of a peg and hole, and then we slowly try to up the ante or add a little tiny bit of a twist to each level.
And we also like to kind of make people laugh or tease people a little bit by introducing rules that they basically would have no way of figuring out until they get it wrong. We thought maybe that would frustrate people, but it turns out they like it a lot.
Exactly, by playing with such a simplistic mechanic, it allowed us to milk a lot of variety and fun out of slight twists on the content.
Right, and one of the things we wanted to do was find a couple simple mechanics and build as many variations on those mechanics as possible, combine them in as many different ways as possible, while still never making the player feel overburdened that they're having to learn a bunch of buttons or a bunch of commands that they have to understand. We move from 2D to 3D, we add different mechanical things like colors transitioning depending on how far you are from the goal, red, green, and blue combining additively to create white, things shrinking and scaling as they move, and all these mechanics added together, very intuitively. You don't have to think about how you're solving the level, you just solve the level. And then what you're seeing right here is infinite loop mode. Infinite loop mode could sort of be thought of as remixing the core levels in a variety of different ways.
It's a procedurally generated infinite mode that people can play indefinitely. Every Simian interface level aims to be both visually appealing and function as a game level as well. And the infinite loop mode was really no different in that. We started every level by designing what it would look like as the solution, and then kind of worked our way backwards. And oftentimes we try to make the solution something that would be visually striking, but we also, in the year and a half or so that we worked on a more curated original game, we started developing kind of constraints or rules that essentially programmed into the infinite loop mode for creating these levels.
Right, certain things like symmetry or balance, visual balance, wholeness, making a bunch of pieces fit together as a solid object. Some of these things were sort of unspoken rules that people could intuitively solve, and in playtesting, we figured out which levels people could solve without ever having to ask us, well, what am I doing here? And we also have lots of little things to add variety to the infinite loop mode. There are lots of clear patterns that can emerge, but there are also little ways that those patterns can be tweaked and adjusted so that they're slightly unexpected, so that it keeps it fresh.
Even very early on, the results were quite surprising.
Right, and that was a part of our goal, was to make something that, we know how the game works under the hood, but we wanted to make something that would keep us entertained, and that's actually kind of challenging to do.
And we didn't just stop at the gameplay either. We decided to really embrace this theme of randomization and infiniteness, or endlessness. The music is actually, if not infinite, is procedurally generated via 2 different tracks. Even the cat's vest hue is randomized.
There are also a number of story elements that the player sees on the screens at the end of each module, and these sentences are randomized among a very large pool, and even the sentences themselves have a number of words and phrases that can be swapped out. And in terms of the context, we sort of made it feel like this is a fun experiment. The player's being rewarded for participating, but there's something slightly sinister or forced about the entire experiment. The player gets a lot of opportunities during the infinite loop mode to learn a little bit more of the story of the game, but we still decided to leave it quite vague. The last major addition to Simian Interface ++ is the timed mode. It's basically a challenge mode. Similar to Tetris, you are bound to fail, but the whole point is to see how far you can go before you run out of time. And Crazy Taxi style, the player's adding time to the clock by solving levels. So hopefully people will have a lot of fun competing at this as well.